the floor to Madame Diane Alai, who is the representative of the Baha'i religious community.
Thank you very much, and thank you for organizing this meeting on the human rights violations that take place in Iran regarding minorities. As was mentioned, the Baha'i today in Iran are the largest non-Muslim, because clearly the Sunnis are much, number of Sunnis is much larger, but the largest non-Muslim religious minority in Iran. And yet, as you mentioned, they are not represented in the constitution. And so therefore, from that very original beginning of the Islamic Republic, there has been very overt persecution against the members of the Baha'i faith. And this persecution is really based only on a religious prejudice. The goal of the Islamic Republic at its highest level is to really eradicate the Baha'i community as a viable entity. And so this eradication has taken various forms throughout the years. And I think this is, in a way, the change in the form has been thanks to also the international monitoring and the international scrutiny and the international pressure that has been put on the Iranian government. Because at the beginning of the Islamic Republic, Baha'is were killed in large numbers. And the choice that was given to them is either you recant your faith, you say that you're a Muslim, or we will kill you. Today, there are no more, or very few, no more official executions of Baha'is, although there are still some Baha'is who are killed by elements that are unknown. For example, there was the case just a couple of years ago, Mr. Ataullah Rezvani, a case in Bandar Abbas, which still has not been resolved. So in a way, there is also a signal on behalf of the Iranian authorities that whoever kills or does any violent act against the Baha'i community, anyway, they will not be prosecuted. And it's basically condoned by the government as well. Today, there are still 81 Baha'is who are imprisoned only for their religious beliefs. And the leadership of the Baha'i community, because as you may know, the Baha'i faith does not have any clergy. So the leadership of the Baha'i community in Iran, which is composed of 7 persons, 5 men and 2 women, are still in prison. They have been in prison for over 8 years now. And they have not been granted, except for one of them who was granted just 3 days of furlough a few months ago. All the others have not been granted any form of furlough. And some of them, like Mr. Khanjami, is over 80 years old. Their sentence was originally 20 years, and now with the change in the penal code, it has been reduced to 10 years. But what is happening now, and what is the new policy of the Iranian government, is really to try to eradicate the Baha'i community as a viable entity, but under the radar screen of the United Nations or any international scrutiny, by really not allowing the Baha'is in Iran, who are throughout all of Iran, of all ethnic backgrounds, to be able to live viably. The youth are not allowed to go to university, and when they're allowed, as soon as they're identified as Baha'is, they're expelled from universities, and that has been going on for 3 generations now. So you imagine what an impoverishment of a whole community it is not to be allowed to go to university, and with children that have very high grades. Some of them have been ranking until secondary school very high grades, and yet they're not allowed to go to university. Baha'is are not allowed to be employed in public government since the beginning of the Islamic Revolution. They cannot hold any public position. But now also in the private sector, the Baha'is' shop are being closed. And this excuse of closing the Baha'i shops is because Baha'is close their shops during holy days. The Baha'i faith has 9 holy days, like the Christians have holy days, like the Muslims have holy days, like the Jews have holy days. and during those holidays they don't work, which is something that is very normal. And it's just 9 days, it's not like months around the year. And yet, during those 9 days when they want to close their shops because of the simple fact that they're closing their shops, then their shops are sealed and they're not allowed to reopen. Even a Baha'i whose shop was sealed, he decided to sell his goods in front of his shop, and they also took him away and confiscated everything that he was selling in front of his shop. So this is really this strangulation, this economic strangulation that is really taking place, which is very similar to, of course, what we hear from our friends from also ethnic minorities, ethnic groups, you know, the economic strangulation is also a form of eradication as a viable entity of any group of Iranians in Iran. Just maybe a last point is also that the Baha'is are not even free from persecution when they're dead. Baha'i cemeteries are also being bulldozed. Tombs are being desecrated. I mean, there is absolutely no respect even for the dead. And there are a number of people in Tabriz, in the Azerbaijan province, Baha'is are not even allowed to be buried. Corpses are being stolen so that they can be buried in the Islamic way, so that the Baha'i cannot have an Islamic burial. So this persecution goes really from children who are persecuted to the dead. Finally, of course, and I know from friends and colleagues who are of other religious minorities that, you know, it is the same for them. The media, through TV, radio, internet, sermons in the mosques really are inciting hatred against the Baha'is, spreading lies about the Baha'is, making completely false accusations against the Baha'is, and not allowing, which is a law in the Iranian law, which is in the Iranian press law, that you have a right of reply, but not allowing the Baha'is to be able to counter these lies and to be able to defend themselves against these accusations. So it's really a very bleak, unfortunately, and very widespread persecution of the Baha'is in Iran. And I would say to my dear colleagues that, you know, here at the UN, we talk also about multiple discrimination. So, you know, imagine what would be the case of somebody who is a Baha'i, but is also, I don't know, a Baluch or an Arab or a Kurd, and then is also a woman. And so, you know, I mean, these are the things that we have to come to realize, and this is the multiple persecutions and the very bad situations of human rights violations in Iran. Thank you.